dividing by a 2-digit divisor. All that means is the number that's on the outside of the bar, the number that we're dividing into the bigger number, is going to have 2 digits. So it's kind of like what we saw yesterday when we were looking at problems that look like that, except yesterday we were estimating, and today we're finding the actual answer. That's the difference. So what you're going to notice is that we're going to use the same steps that we used in chapter 3. When we divided in chapter 3, it's the divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, repeat, and we do that again and again as many times as it takes to get through all those numbers that are in the dividend underneath the bar. So the difference is the numbers are bigger, so you're going to have to, it's going to take a little bit more to try to figure out, because they're not basic facts. So before it was basic facts. How many times will 3 fit into 12? We knew that it was 4. Now it's going to be like maybe 52 into this other big number, like 1,569. We don't know how many times it fits. So we have to use some guess and check and some other methods to try to figure it out. Okay, so don't feel overwhelmed. Just know that the basic steps are the same that we're going to be working on today. So let's go on to our essential question, which is the strategies that you can use to divide by a 2-digit divisor. Just like yesterday. Yesterday we talked about the strategy that we used was just estimating. Today's strategy is using the standard algorithm. I'm going to skip the problem of the day today because I want to make sure we have enough time for lots of examples.
Lots of examples.
Yes, the more examples, the better. So our question up at the top says, how is dividing by a 1-digit divisor similar to dividing by a 2-digit divisor? And I've kind of already answered that for you because I already told you that it's similar because you use the same steps. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. It's the same steps. The numbers are just bigger, which sometimes can make you maybe a little bit intimidated when you see the big numbers, but just remember that the steps are going to be the same. So in your notes, I want you to write that we're on chapter 4, lesson 3, and the title is Divide by a 2-digit divisor. So this problem here in the middle of the screen I won't be able to get rid of, but we're going to do that one first as our first example just so that you remember the steps. So this one has a 1-digit divisor. This is like what we worked on in chapter 3. 2 divided into 4 goes twice. 2 times 2 is 4. Subtract and then bring down the 8. 2 goes into 8. 4 times 2 is 8. So then your final answer is 24. So write that into your notes, and then next to it we're going to write the steps again. This will help us to remember. It's always nice just to write those down to remember the steps. So exactly what we did in this problem, we're going to be doing in the other examples and the problems that we're going to work through today. So like I said, the difference is that the numbers are just going to be bigger. Everything else is the same. I'm going to erase this stuff right here. But I want to leave on the side our steps. And then we're going to practice one with some bigger numbers. And you'll notice that it does get it's going to look a little bit tricky at first. But sometimes you have to use some guess and check, some multiplication over on the side to see how many times something fits in, because we don't really know, because they're not basic facts. So our first one is 595 divided by 23. So if you do an estimate, which is what we learned yesterday, if you start with an estimate, that will help you to make sure that once you get a final answer, you can double check that your answer is somewhere similar to what your estimate is, then you know that you got the right answer. So if I rounded 23 to 20 and I rounded 595 up to 600, then that would be 300, right? So my answer should be somewhere around 300. Wait, let me write that down. I said the wrong thing because I didn't write it down. So 600 divided by 20, that's a 0. 30. It would be 30. See, I I added an extra 0 on there. So 2 goes into 6 3 times. Crossed out these zeros, and then you have a 0. And you know why I decided to write that down? Because when I said 300, and then I thought about it for a second, like 20 doesn't go into 600 300 times. That doesn't make sense. So I kind of caught myself there, and then I rewrote it to make sure. So our answer should be somewhere around 30. That's my estimate. So now if I'm actually going to solve, I'm going to write the problem here. Now here's where it comes in that we don't know how many times 23 fits into these numbers, because now we're working with some bigger numbers, right? So sometimes people get really confused here at this point and start to complain and then just say that they don't want to do it anymore. So I'm going to show you some ways that you can work through this. So 23 does not fit into 5, right? Because a 2-digit number is not going to ever fit into a 1-digit number, right? That's not going to work. So if the number on the outside of the bar is a 2-digit number, you're not going to be able to fit it into the 1-digit number first. So I'm going to put like a little dash up here, because remember, we're going to hold the space, so we make sure we place our first digit in the right place. So I'm going to actually divide 23 into 59. Now, here is where all of those estimate lessons are going to come in handy, because I know you're going to try to tell me, Tristan. I'm going to call on you in 1 second. Because you could just make a guess and say, 7. 23 fits into 59 7 times. And then you could try it out over here on the side. And you could figure it out and see what it equals. We all know that's way too much, right? That's way too many times. But do you see how my guess was just kind of like, I just made up a number and guessed? The other way that you can do it is make kind of a little estimate and say 23 is about 20, 59 is about 60. So Tristan, what's your guess of how many times you think it will fit?
2.
He thinks 2. So let's do 23.
Because if it goes in one more time, that's 6. That's over.
Okay, so that's some good reasoning. So 23 times 2 would be 46. Do you think it would fit in again?
No.
No? So it looks like it is 2. But do you see how we used some reasoning to figure it out? He said if it went in 3 times, my first number would be a 6, because 2 times 3 is 6, right? The first number here is a 2, and if you multiplied it by 3, you're going to get something in the 600s, or in the 60s, and he knew that the number was only 59, and so it would be too much. So that's why he chose 2. Now, he didn't necessarily know what 23 times 2 was. Maybe he did. But that's why we did this little math problem on the side. So don't be afraid to do a little bit of work to try to figure out what it equals, because you're going to need to do that. So at the top, you're going to have the 2, and then you're going to have the 46 underneath, and then you're going to subtract. 9 minus 6 is 3, 5 minus 4 is 1. Then bring down. So now we have 135. See how it's the same? It's the same. We're doing the same thing as we were doing before. So now, how many times do you think it fits? Use this that we've already done. So we've already done this work right here. So we know that 23 times 2 is 46. So now we need to think of an estimate of how many times you think it might fit into 135. Somebody throw out a guess, and we're going to try to see what.
8 times. 121.
I hear 8 times.
No. 10 times.
So 23 times 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 2 more is 18. So that's 184. Too much, right?
I think.
So let's change our guess. What'd you say, Aiden? He says 6. So 6 times 3 is 18. Ooh, that's 138. Oh, what do you think, Hamza? 5. That's really close, though. That one was close, but it must be 5. I'm running out of room. 115. So, but that's as close as you can get without going over. Because if I multiply by 6, I've gone over a little bit. So 5 would have to be the number up here. So my answer is 25, remainder 20. 25, remainder 20. Now, as long as your remainder is less than this number over here, you're okay. 20 sounds like a big remainder, but as long as it's less than the other one, you're okay. Now maybe you guessed 5 from the beginning. Then you wouldn't have needed this, and you wouldn't have needed this, and you would have just guessed 5 and noticed that you were close enough. The whole point is sometimes we don't know how many times 23 goes into 135. You just have to do some guessing and figure it out. So we made a guess of 8. We noticed it was too big, so we lowered our guess, and then we checked again. So that's called guess and check, right? That makes sense. Guess first, you check it. If it's not okay, then you make a new guess and you check it again. So sometimes you get lucky and you get the right guess on the first try. But sometimes you have to make a couple of guesses before you can figure it out. Now, something I want to tell you, listen really carefully. Sometimes people decide that all of this work over here on the side is they want to just get rid of it all when they're finished with the problem, and so then they go and take a bunch of time to erase all of that. Don't do that. Let me tell you why. All of that work that you did could sometimes be helpful in another problem. Sometimes I could be multiplying, say I multiply 26, and I'm trying to, or 26 is my divisor, or 22 is my divisor. Those are numbers that are close to 23. So you could use some of these guesses that you did in a previous problem to base your new guess off of. Okay, so if, let's say I'm trying to, the next problem, my divisor is 22. And I'm trying to divide it into, say, 180. Well, I have a guess right here that says that 23 times 8 is 184. See what I mean? So maybe you could use that information to help you base a new guess for your new problem. So don't scratch out the work, don't erase it, don't spend time doing all that, because sometimes people just get really irritated that they have all that on their paper and they think it's messy, but it really is it could sometimes help you for a later problem. Sometimes you have the exact same number on the outside over here, and then you get really lucky because maybe you've done all this work and you don't have to do it a second time. So think about that before you try to erase. Here we go. Let's try a new problem.
We already had that one. Equals a lot of line.
I gave you 23. See that? So sometimes you're going to have the same divisor in a different problem that you can go, I think I've done 23 before. Look back up through your work, find it there. There you go. So based on the work that we've done, did you guys see all of your work? I saw that 23 times 6 equals 138. But I'm trying to get into 135, so you should already know it's going to be 5, right? This 6 is going to be too many. 23 doesn't fit into 1, doesn't fit into 13. It fits into 135 5 times equals 115. So it'd be 5, remainder 20. Got that? So do you see how the work that you've already done could help you with a future problem? Okay, try this one. These are going to be some different numbers. I'm going to help you with the estimate, and then I'm going to let you do the rest. If I change 874 to 800, I change 38 to 40, then my estimate's going to be about 20. So my actual answer should be somewhere around 20. So once my problem is finished, I'm going to look at my answer and I'm going to see if I have something around 20. And if I do, then I know I probably got the right answer. If I have some really big number, a really small number, we may need to relook at the problem. So try to solve this one. I'll give you a minute and then I'll solve it and then see if we get the same thing. Hamza, what do you think? 2? His guess was 2. He thinks 38 is going to fit into 87 twice. So because 38, let's think about his guess really quick. 38 is about 40. 40 times 2 would be 80. We could do that in our head. And this number is 87. It should be close. So let's see. 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 more is 7. So that's 76. We know we can't get another 38 in there between that and 87. So here's that up there. 76 down here. Bring down the 4. So now, would I guess something like 9?
No.
Why wouldn't I guess 9? Why would 9 not be a good guess? Concrete, why?
Because if 2 barely fits into 87, how is 9 supposed to
Okay, so he says if 2 times 38 is so close to 87, like 76, then how would 9? 9's going to make it such a way bigger number, and 114 is not that much bigger than 76, right? So we need to increase our guess, but not by that much. So what's your guess, Aiden?
3?
He says 3. Let's try 3. 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 more is 11. So now it fits exactly. So that means this problem has no remainder. So the answer would be 23. Maybe you guessed 4. If you guessed 4, you got a number that was a little bigger than 114, and then you would have to make your guess a little bit smaller the next time. Okay? Finish copying that one down. We said 800 divided by 40 would be 20. So that was our estimate because we rounded those numbers, or we used compatible numbers. And our final answer was 23. And 23 is pretty close to 20, so I know that my answer is probably correct. This is where you might realize that something's gone wrong. If you put your 2 way up here and you put a 3 here, maybe you put a 0 at the end or something, and you made your answer 230, and your guess was only 20 as your estimate, you know that you did something wrong. Either your estimate's wrong or your actual answer's wrong. Something's not right. So you just have to make sure that you're checking your estimate with your actual answer. So that on your work today, it is going to tell you to estimate, and then divide to find the answer. You don't have to estimate on every single one, but I would recommend that if you're having a hard time, to use the skill we learned yesterday and estimate and then find the answer. I'll have you do 5 just like I did on the other assignment that we did like this. So you'll have to do at least 5 where you do an estimate and then the actual answer. And then if you want to do more, you could always do more if you want to. Yes, James. You should estimate on 5 of them. Only on 5 out of all of the problems. No, 5 for sure. If you want, you can do more. Yes. You have to remember the skill of estimating, and you have to be able to use it. I'm glad you think so. Then it'll be easy for you. All right, example number 1. Look at your paper. Example number 1. Example number 1 says, the yearbook committee took 836 photos with a digital camera over 76 days. If they took an equal amount of photos every day, how many photos did they take each day? Check your answer for reasonableness. So reasonableness means you're going to look at the numbers and say, is it reasonable that times that would give you that answer? Like if you reversed it, just like I did when I messed up and told you 300 instead of 30, it didn't seem reasonable to me, so I went back and looked at it again. So you should do that. That's just a really quick in your brain, using some common sense and checking if that answer seems right. So let's see. We're going to divide 76 days into 836 photos. 76 won't fit into 8, but it does fit into 83. How many times will 76 fit into 83? Nolan, what do you think? Once. We don't really need to do any math for that, right?
If the number is 50 or more, and the number that you're doing is 2 digits, it will not fit in. That is a good tip.
Oh, that is a good tip.
If it is 50 or more, it will not fit into 2 digits more than once.
That's right, because then you're going to get into a 3-digit number.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Good job. All right, so it fits in once. 76 then. So then we can subtract. We're going to have to borrow here. Well, how many times does 76 fit into 76? How many times? Once. So 1 times 76 is just 76. So that was a pretty good one. I liked that one. That one was fast. So we didn't even have to do any work on the side because 1 was our number that we were multiplying by every time. So 76 goes into 836 11 times. Let's see if that sounds reasonable. 76 times 10 would be 760, right? Because we could do that in our head pretty quick. So 836 seems like that's a close enough number that would be a reasonable answer. Good. That one was a good one. All right, example number 2. Here we go. I'm glad. Here we go. Example number 2. 751 divided by 30. And you can see their estimate. They did 75. They changed it to 750 divided by 30. I'm going to have to wait again for the people who are talking. You good? Okay. So they made another estimate here. So instead of 751, they made it 750, and then they left the 30 alone. So 3 goes into 75 25 times, and then I'd cross out these zeros. So our estimate's 25. We think it's going to be about 25 is our answer. 30 does not fit into 7. How many times will 30 fit into 75? 30 is a good number to have to be as your divisor, because that's when you should be able to do a little bit in your head, because it ends in a 0. Angelina, what do you think? How many times will 30 times what? Oops. 30 times 3 is going to give you 90, right? Isn't that going to give you 90? So this first, she's saying 25 because 30 goes into 75 twice. She's telling me that both digits in the number. When I subtract, I get 151 after I bring down. 30 goes into, I know that 30 goes into 150 5 times. If you're not sure, you can make yourself a guess on the side. It's 150. So 151 is also going to be 5 times. That's just going to leave me a remainder, right? So the answer would be 25, remainder 1. When I'm checking for reasonableness, my estimate was 25. My actual answer was 25, remainder 1. Pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that's pretty close. That means the other answer could have been like that means.
Should have gotten something pretty close. Okay, try the guided practice question. When you're finished with that, check it with your neighbor. And then I want you to start the independent practice for your 20 minutes.